Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here once again with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, the content train, it just keeps going, mate. Pulled out of the station a long time ago. Manchester United away, Premier League preview. First of all, mate, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm very good. I apologise for the slightly wet hair. I was at the Trafford Centre today doing some early Christmas shopping, and sort of got caught in a typical Manchester downfall on the way back. So I'm supporting this sort of drowned rat look on the pod today. But very good aside from that, mate. It's Football Manager launch day, so I've seen a lot of people. I love seeing people's saves. I like who they're signing. That's all been very exciting. But yeah, mate, excited to get into this one. I think we've had to get a little bit creative with how we're gonna sort of do this because obviously you guys have just had a Manchester United preview and a Manchester United review, and then like it's going to be a Manchester United preview and review again. So we're going to get a little bit different, look at the game in a little bit more detail, and like because we realised we haven't actually gone into a deep dive on Unai Emery's tactics, which we usually do. So it's come a little bit late, but at least we've got that experience from looking at the Villa game and stuff like that, which will help us give that sort of claret and blue tinted look at things.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. You scared the life out of me earlier when you were like, I've only just managed to go Christmas shopping. I'm thinking, it's the first week of November and I've not got anything
Oh
done. And,
man,
and I was like,
I'm
should I have got this done?
Mate, I'm terrible at Christmas presents. Like I am so bad at thinking and buying. So I have to give myself like a 4 month run up to make like just to give myself some ideas because I am terrible at gifts. And thankfully, obviously my girlfriend Chloe and everything like that. A female influence is also always very important on
Always.
these things. And so yeah, more like if you've ever received a Christmas present off me, anybody, I know my friends and family listen. More likely than not, it was Chloe that thought of it. So at least now I've got a hand in buying them.
And if it was a shit gift, then Dan had to think for
Yes,
himself.
you'll be able to know who bought it.
Absolutely. But speaking of gifts, mate, Unai Emery, he gave us one hell of a gift on the weekend, mate. Talk
Certainly
about
did.
early Christmas presents. Wow. I'm still high on that. I can't lie. Um, I think, sometimes, you guys did enjoy the podcast, so it's fine, but you'll have to forgive us because sometimes when these things happen, uh, we do get a bit carried away and it's the emotion. But of course, everyone's feeling that. So yeah, today's a good opportunity for us to take a deeper look. Um, and I mean, talking about bad haircuts as well, mate. I don't know why, but for whatever reason earlier, I was watching um, we did a transfer rumor mill. It was probably around January time. I think it was January
Okay.
because there was a one football sponsorship. I can't remember exactly who the player was because it was someone from like the Croatian first division. But it was a video where we was talking about Matt Target, Trezeguet.
Oh
Uh,
yes, I
yeah,
remember the one.
it's that. And for whatever reason, it came up in my own in my YouTube recommended, and because I'm a ginormous narcissist, I thought I'll watch my own podcast. And my hair was an absolute state. I put it on and immediately turned it off. I clearly, for whatever reason, just did not decide to do my hair today, and I can't believe I let myself come on air with it just fucking all over the place.
I dread to
Um,
think, mate. There's some of the
mate,
Barnets
it
we've
was
both been sporting over the years.
it's
There's
been
some
bad. I mean,
shockers.
mine's bad at the moment. I last got it cut before I went on holiday, and I've not been able to get booked in since. I've been back for like what, a month now, nearly a month. So I had a haircut two
Oh,
months ago. But I'm usually like I used to be like haircut every 1.5 month, 2 month. Like I was like I can't
yeah.
justify a haircut every week or every 2 weeks. I don't get paid enough for that either. Like I'm not a professional athlete either, so I don't need to. But um, but recently I've been sort of cutting it down to 3 weeks, skin fade 3 weeks. Maybe this is my sign because it's the winter to let it grow out a little bit. But I'm booked in on Friday and I can't bloody wait. But less of that. You guys want tactical analysis. You want Aston Villa. You don't want anything about our Barnets. What I found interesting about this game, mate, was we spoke a lot about formation and systems and personnel and who can fit where, sort of briefly in and amongst the excitement of Unai getting appointed. But what was interesting to me, mate, was in I think it was his post game presser, he essentially said, look, formations, they're arbitrary. They don't matter. All I want is to deploy 11 players and play to as many of their strengths as possible. And that's what we did. And you look at the average positions, it was a 4-2-2, as we mentioned. But what was what I found really interesting about this specifically, mate, was and again we did touch on it slightly. The Leander Dendoncker. At times when I was watching the game, I was like, why on earth have we got Dendoncker pressing on the back four? But having Dendoncker sit on Ericsson and just suffocate him for the whole 90 minutes was a stroke of genius. And I've gone back and I've watched other clips of his Villarreal teams, his Sevilla teams, less so at Arsenal, but Unai has there's this trend of taking a sitter, a destroyer type player, and playing them as an auxiliary 10 to essentially regain space in the midfield. You know, he's done it with Vicente Iborra recently at Villarreal, and it allows the Ever Benegas of the sides, the Giovanni Lo Celsos, whoever that may be for Villa. In this case, it was Emi Buendia, who was often dropping in just that little bit deeper, and Jacob Ramsey as well. The freedom, about 30 yards of space between the defence and the midfield at any given time. And, you know, there was a few times, I'm sure you'll agree, mate, as well, Dendoncker looked incredibly leggy, but it worked. Like it was really interesting to see.
Yeah, but I think someone like Dendoncker is always going to work best when they've got a very clear, defined role. And it was the midfield that won us this game, really. And I don't think you've been able to say that too many times for Villa. And I think what we're going to find with this Emery system is because it's obviously with the fullbacks provide the width, the two tens in Ramsey and Buendia were so narrow. And it really was. You sort of had these three banks of two in almost sort of identical width going up the pitch. But obviously, what that creates when you have the two sixes and the two sort of tens is that four midfielders occupying central areas, which is when you come up against more often than not a 4-2-3-1, as Erik ten Hag played. I mean, a Dutch manager that doesn't play 4-3-3, still can't get my head around it. But he plays a 4-2-3-1. But even with the 4-3-3 is you're going to have a midfield overload most of the time. And that's what was key to this game. And that's why Man United never really had a grip on it for long periods of time. And we sort of had these inverted wingers. And what that did as well is that the United fullbacks, and it's a terrible example because I'm going to have to use Lindelof, who played the centre-back, but you mentioned in the pod, mate, when Lindelof went chasing Ollie for the first goal. It's because when you have these players who are playing so narrowly and so centrally, the wider players, obviously it was the centre-back in that case, but often the fullbacks sort of get sucked into those middle areas. And I think what that will give us going forward is Dean, Cash, those boys have more space then to get down the flanks. And I think it's a case of walking before we can run. But the benefits of playing that quite narrow system with the two floating tens, I think we're going to see more of as we get down the line. And I think we're only just starting to see the benefits of that in this first game. But yeah, watch out for what the fullbacks can do. And it wouldn't be surprising me if they play more of an increased role away from home, because they can be that outball which we can get out on the counter-attack.
Absolutely. And I think as well, the issue that we've had before with, you know, the previous manager and using the fullbacks for width and things like that was we still defended our box extremely, you know, with extreme amount of narrowness. Like one thing that really did catch my eye was the fact we had Emmy, not Emmy. Well, I guess, you know, Emmy was so involved in the play as a goalkeeper. He was constantly fizzing passes to Ezri and Ty, but Ezri and Ty were about, you know, 30 yards away from each other at any given time. They'd spread so far to allow the fullbacks to push on when we're starting, you know, when we have possession, when we're in the defensive phase. And I found that really interesting because that's a role where I know we're going to see the best of Tyrone Mings. He's in a position where he's significantly more comfortable further out on that left-hand side, you know, almost where he started his career as a left back. And it seemed, you know, obviously I'm not getting too carried away just yet by this. I need to see it week in, week out. But when the fullbacks did bomb on, we did see Dougie drop in as well, which again is something that he has done before. It hasn't been as nearly as effective because we haven't packed the middle of that of park as effectively as we did against Manchester United, essentially, and with clear instruction as well. Because it's all right just having players stand there, but knowing exactly what they're doing, like Dendoncker press trigger as soon as Eriksen receives the ball deep. And for Dean and if you look at the average positions, Luca Dean essentially played left wing. Like that's how far up the field he was consistently. But he was given the space to because Dalot, United didn't know what to do. Diego Dalot he's just as high if you look at the average positions because he was constantly trying to get United forward, but he wasn't able to receive the ball because we suffocated the middle of the park so well. And we spoke about, to then go on to Leon, mate. We spoke about Leon and how this is a role as a secondary striker, which could work very well. And, with Pack in the midfield, United have to go wide when they have possession. When David De Gea has the ball and he is looking to bring his side forward, they have to go wide. And essentially what we did, we put two strikers on two centre-halves who were playing equally as wide as our centre-halves. And we just had so much space. It was brilliant. It's not like how many times in the past, 365 days have we been able to sit here and say that we've put in a very competent tactical performance, and it's not been that moment of magic that was constantly quoted as we were needing. What we needed was a clear game plan, and we've always had the players to execute that. And I think Leon, with the confidence he's in now as well, mate, obviously had a bit of a rough time with the butcher, as they call him, Martinez, after getting a few jabs in the rib. We didn't really speak about the officials because we was just too giddy about the result, but it was an absolutely despicable performance from Anthony Taylor, who, if you don't know, is from Wythenshawe, and if you don't know where Wythenshawe is, it's in Greater Manchester.
It's bloody close to you.
It's pretty close to Old Trafford. But this role that and the confidence that Leon's got, I think, again, we could see the same again. To be completely honest, mate, on Thursday night, couldn't we?
Yeah, for sure, mate, for sure. And it's really interesting. Like, I was looking through Unai's teams of the past, and it's really interesting how you can draw parallels between certain positions and certain players in our squad. So, if you take, there's always been that anchor that realistically is never going to cross the halfway line. Do you know what I mean? See Leander Dendoncker, who I think if he goes more than 40 yards, closer to the opposition's goal, I think he'd get a nosebleed. Although he has scored against us at Villa Park, hasn't he? He has scored. I do forget that. But if you look at someone like Francis Coquelin at Villarreal, or Thiago Motta, or at PSG, Lucas Torreira at Arsenal, Pejovic at Sevilla, there's always this anchor of the midfield. And now at PSG, at Arsenal, he did play a 4-3-3. And I think at Sevilla, he played a 4-2-3-1. So he's got this sort of tactical fluidity, it seems, but there always are the prominent wingers in his side. And obviously, really interesting, actually. Luca Dean worked under Emery at PSG. I found this out earlier.
I think it was only for a few weeks, wasn't it? It wasn't a very long time.
It wasn't very long, but it happened.
It was a good time. It wasn't a long time.
No. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't know. I don't need to reel off all the wide forwards he had at his disposal at PSG because, it's almost irrelevant how much better they are than what we have on offer. And I'm very excited about what we have on offer. But yeah, there is a step down. But it's interesting at Arsenal, he used Iwobi and Reece Nelson in wide positions, who I think are going to be your sort of Bailey type. But then there's a Mkhitaryan and players like that, or at PSG, sometimes it was Pastore. It was there's always this sort of
technical aspect.
Yes,
of it. You're Emery Buendia of the side.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. So it's really interesting how you can draw these parallels. And I think that there's a lot of that. And obviously your Luiz is going to be your Danny Parejo, your Marco Verratti, or if he's as good as those boys, we're in for a treat. But it's going to be really interesting to see, because United will change a lot in their team. And I mean, to be honest with you, I looked at their lineup and I was like, I swear they've got these lineups the wrong way around. That's the team I expected in the cup. So I think we'll probably see their league side on Thursday. So it will be a totally different proposition, and United will inevitably play better than they did. But it's interesting. Unai seems to have a lot of tools to work with that he's quite comfortable with using.
Yeah, and I think as well, when you look at like Bruno was suspended. I imagine he'll come straight back in for Eriksen after that performance. And that is obviously a threat that we'll have to try and contain, keep Bruno outside of the penalty box. Not because he's a threat from shooting, just because he's always diving. Harry Maguire didn't play. Maybe he gets a run out. That's another positive, being completely and utterly honest, isn't it, mate? Although saying that, I honestly, Leon dealt with Martinez so well. And like Martinez is a good player, a very dirty player. You know, pinned his himself to the mast there on that one in the last game, if we're being completely frank. But he is a very good defender, and Leon had him on toast all game long. So, you know, it's going to be interesting. Maybe, you know, maybe we see a Malacia at left back as well. Luke Shaw obviously didn't have a very good game. He got a yellow card fairly early on, and I think that would have hampered how he attacks the game, if we're being competitive. Because there was an opportunity for him to get a second yellow as well, mate, which he didn't go for. That challenge on Jacob. That was just, which obviously it all worked out anyway. In any case, because Lucas scored the free kick from there. I think we have to give a shout out to Austin McPhee as well. I think we have to give a shout out to Austin McPhee. And I don't know about you, mate. I was watching Ben Foster's show this morning. He had Neil Cutler on. I know I sent it to you earlier. I don't know if you had the chance, because obviously you've been out today. But Cuts, he detailed an interesting story of what happened after Nottingham Forest away, and Steven Gerrard essentially came in the next day and said to McPhee, "What the fuck are you doing? All of our free kicks are hitting the walls. Like, your job is pointless." So after having a bit of a wobble, McPhee apparently took a look at, had a real deep dive into the numbers, the metrics, and all this, and he'd noticed that when the referees were counting out the 8 yards for free kicks, that they were they were about 7.2 yards, and they weren't exactly 8 yards. And essentially what Cutler was saying is that seems negligible, but we've seen with that free kick from Luca Dean, that has apparently walked out the exact length. And Lucas hit it first time. It's not even a perfect hit. It doesn't go top corner, but it still beats the goalkeeper an extra 0.8 of a yard. So that's really interesting. That, because not only does that change Austin McPhee's job, it also makes your goalkeeping coach's job a lot harder as well, because defending set plays with that 0.8 extra that you would generally allow, which nobody realised, was significantly easier. And Kutz said on the Fozcast that he foresees just a shit ton of free kicks being scored essentially in the league now, because McPhee escalated this to the referees association, and it's now something that they're taking more seriously, which I thought was really interesting.
That is really interesting, mate. That is really interesting. And hopefully a few more of them can go in for the Villa as well, because Lord knows we've been deprived of those over the years. Obviously, kind of Horahan put in a fair few, but they were all in the Championship, weren't they? So, yes. Let's hope so, mate, because we do have some, and that's why it's been frustrating, is because we've had some fantastic free kick takers, and now with Philippe and Lucas in the side and everything like that. Dougie always, everyone says Dougie's the standout in training, don't they? That on free kicks. So yeah, we've got a decent little Arsenal there, and so hopefully this is the start of things to come, mate.
Hopefully, some force for change. So hopefully we can get some good press out for Austin McPhee. Because boy, he does need it. But it's only fair. I thought it's only fair to shout him out, because we've
100%
called him out.
100%.
We've called him out so many times, and I found this really interesting. And from what I gathered from Kutz's chat, he seems to rate McPhee quite highly, despite maybe making his job a little bit more difficult with that new revelation. But from a Villa perspective, mate, do you go unchanged? I mean, obviously, Den Donker's cup tied. Bednarek is also cup tied. He won't be available. How do we go for this one? Because we've given them our playbook now. Is it? Can you repeat the trick twice and get away with it?
I would change, as we said in the last one, mate. I think Ings will get minutes. I think Booba will get minutes. I think Morgan will get minutes. There's a few. I don't think it will be a wholesale changes, but we've got a good opportunity in the cup this season, because, let's be honest, the usual objectives of chasing Europe are probably out the window at this point. So as long as Unai can steady the ship and keep getting us clear of the relegation zone, then the cup competitions give us a real opportunity this season. And so I think we'll take it quite seriously. I don't think there'll be too many changes, but I think a few of those boys I mentioned will get a run out.
Mate, Sanson as well. I was so happy to see him playing, mate. So happy. Just the tweet from afterwards, everything. He deserves that moment. So
Chef's kiss,
hopefully,
mate. Chef's
hopefully it's a
kiss.
sign of more to come from him, mate.
100%.
And he can finally kickstart his Villa career. No less than almost 2 years now since he's joined. I think as well today. Am I right in saying on Twitter today? Obviously today's the Tuesday we're recording this. It's Tuesday evening. 2 years to the day. No, a year to the day since Dean was sacked.
Yes, yeah.
Was that
Southampton
today?
was the yeah. Southampton was a couple of days ago, and he got sacked like a day or two later, didn't he? So
That's pretty
I
grim,
believe
that.
so.
But it's funny. It's funny. I didn't. There's not really enough time to talk about him in Norwich, but a load of Villa fans have been defending him, but the Norwich fans seem to hate him. But
Yeah, they
like,
do.
what I would take from that is like we despised Gerrard, and the Liverpool fans defended him, and that was incredibly frustrating. So
We've
maybe we should
become the
keep our
one
nose
thing we
out.
sworn to kill.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. If there's one thing we hated, it was Liverpool fans in our mentions, mate, telling us to give him time, and he's a legend, and he's this and he's that. But um, nevertheless, it's an exciting time to be a Villa fan, mate. It really is. Thanks for everything, Dino. But Unai's the guy. He is that guy. We're coming to the end of our Zoom, but guys, I think that wraps up our little preview, tactical analysis report, whatever you want to call it, on Manchester United. It's going to be an interesting game. Let us know your score predictions in the comment section down below.
Yep.
If you haven't already, follow us on Instagram. It's at VillaPod, and we're also on TikTok at Heart of the Holte. There's going to be clips from this podcast on there pretty much every single day. Dan and I have been getting content out for you guys, whether that's the main podcast or the shorts. We've been taking it in turns. I believe as well we're going to have Charlotte, our audio editor, back soon. She's getting a new computer, I think, so hopefully we'll sound a lot better for you guys as well. Thanks to everyone for being patient with us on that one. And we are 200 subscribers away from 6,000. So if you guys are watching this and aren't subscribed, do it. Let's get to 6K before the World Cup final. That would mean the world to Dan and I. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and up the Villa.